So, good afternoon everyone. For today's video, we are going to report about the speech of former President Corazon C. Aquino before the United States Congress on September 1986. So, former President Corazon C. Aquino was born on January 25, 1933 and died on August 1, 2009 at the age of 76. As we all know, she was our former president from 1986 to 1992 with the political party of Unido PDP Laban. In September 1986, Aquino made her first state visit to the United States. She gave a speech in a joint session of the United States Congress with U.S. lawmakers wearing yellow ribbons symbolizing support to Aquino, his husband. So, mo rin niya ang gisulti that time. Mr. Speaker, Senator Terman, distinguished members of Congress, 3 years ago I left America in grief to bury my husband, Ninoy Aquino, and I thought I had left it also to lay to rest his restless dream of Philippine freedom. Today, I have returned as the president of a free people. In burying Ninoy, a whole nation honored him by that brave and selfless act of giving honor to a nation in shame, recover its own. A country that had lost faith in its future, founded in a faithless and brazen act of murder. So in giving we receive, in losing we find, and out of defeat we snatch our victory. For the nation, Ninoy became the pleasing sacrifice that answered their prayers for freedom. For myself and our children, Nino was a loving husband and father. His loss 3 times in our lives was always a deep and painful one. 14 years ago this month was the first time we lost him. A president turned dictator and traitor to his oath suspended the constitution and shut down the Congress that was much like this one before which I'm honored to speak. He detained my husband along with the thousands of others, senators, publishers, and anyone who had spoken up for the democracy as its end drew near. But for Ninoy, a long and cruel ordeal was reserved. The dictator already knew that Ninoy was not a body merely to be imprisoned, but a spirit he must break. For even as a dictatorship demolished one by one the institution of democracy, the press, the Congress, the independence of judiciary, the protection of the Bill of Rights, Ninoy kept their spirit alive in himself. The government sought to break him by indignities and terror. He locked him up in a nearly airless cell in a military camp in the north. They stripped him naked and held a threat of a sudden midnight execution over his head. Ninoy held up manfully under all of it. I barely did as well. For 43 days, the authorities would not tell me what had happened to him. This was the first time my children and I felt we had lost him. When that didn't work, they put him on a trial for subversion, murder, and a host of other crimes before a military commission. Nino challenged its authority and went on a fast. If he survived it, then he felt God intended for him for another fate. We had lost him again, for nothing would hold him back from this determination to see his fast through to the end. He stopped only when it dawned on him that the government would keep his body alive after the fast had destroyed his brain. And so, with barely any life in his body, he called off the fast of the 40th day on the 40th day. God meant him for other things, he felt. He did not know that an early death would still be his fate, that only the timing was wrong.
At any time during his long ordeal, Ninoy could have made a separate peace with a dictatorship as so many of his countrymen had done, but the spirit of democracy that inheres in our race and animate this chamber could not be allowed to die, held out in the loneliness of his cell and the frustration of exile, the democratic alternative to the insatiable greed and mindless cruelty of the right and the purging holocaust of the left. And then we lost him irrevocably and more painfully than in the past. The news came to us in the imposition in Boston. He had to be after 3 happiest years of our lives together, but his death was my country's resurrection and the courage and faith by which alone they could be free again. The dictator had called him and held and nobody, yet 2 million people threw aside their positivity and fear and escorted him to his grave. And so began the revolution that has brought me to the democracy's most famous home, the Congress of the United States. The fast had fallen on my shoulders to continue offering the democratic to our people. Archibald MacLeish had said that democracy must be defended by arms when it is attacked arms. and with truth when it is attacked by lies. We failed to say how it shall be won. I held fast to Ninoy's conviction that it must be by the ways of democracy. I held out for participation in the last election. The dictatorship called even if I knew it would be rigged. I was warned by the lawyers of the opposition that I ran the grave risk of legitimizing the foregone results of elections that were clearly going to be fraudulent. But I was not fighting for lawyers but for the people in whose intelligence I had implicit faith. By the exercise of democracy, even in a dictatorship, they would be prepared for democracy when it came. And then also, it was the only way I knew by which we could measure our power even in the terms dictated by the dictatorship. The people vindicated me in an election shamefully marked by government thuggery and fraud. The opposition swept the election, garnering a clear majority of the votes even if they ended up, thanks to the corrupt Commission on Election, with barely a third of the seats in Parliament. Now, I knew our power. Last year, in an excess of arrogance, the dictatorship called for its doom in a snap election. The people of League, with over 1 million signatures, they drafted me to the challenge the dictatorship, and I obliged. The rest is the history that dramatically unfolded on your television screen and across the front page of your newspaper. You saw a nation armed with courage and integrity, stand fast by the democracy against threats and corruption. You saw women, poll watchers break out in tears as armed goons crashed the polling place to steal the ballots. But just the same, they tied themselves to the ballot boxes. You saw a people so committed to the ways of democracy that they prepared to give their lives for its pale imitation. At the end of the day, before another wave of fraud calls this sort the result, I announce the people victory. Many of you here today played a part in changing the policy of your country towards our. We, the Filipinos, thank each of you for what you did, for balancing America's strategic interests against human concerns illuminates the American vision of the world. The co-chairman of the United States Observer Team, in his report to the President, said, I was witness to an extraordinary manifestation of democracy on the part of the Filipino people. The ultimate result was the election of Mrs. Corazon as President and Mr. Salvador Laurel as Vice President of the Philippines. When a subservient parliament announced my opponent's victory, the people then turned out in the streets and proclaimed me the president of all people. And true to their words, when a handful of military leaders declared themselves against the dictatorship, the people rallied to their protection. Surely the people take care of their own. It is on that faith and the obligation it entails that I assume the presidency.
As I came to power peacefully, so shall I keep it. That is my contract with my people and my commitment to God. He had willed that the blood drawn with the lash shall not in my country be paid by blood drawn by the sword, but by the tearful joy of reconciliation. We have swept away absolute power by a limited revolution that respected the life and freedom of every Filipino. Now we are restoring full constitutional government, again as we restore democracy by the ways of democracy. So are we completing the constitutional structures of our new democracy under our Constitution that already gives full respect for the Bill of Rights. A jealousy independent constitutional commission is completing its draft, which will be submitted later this year to a popular referendum. When it is approved, there will be elections for both national and local positions. So, within about a year, from a peaceful but national upheaval that overturned a dictatorship, we shall have returned to full constitutional government. Given the polarization and breakdown we inherited, this is no small achievement by predecessor, set aside democracy to save it from a communist insurgency that numbered less than 500. Unhampered by respect for human rights, he went at it with hammer and tongs. By the time he fled, the insurgency had grown to more than 16,000. I think there is a lesson here to be learned about trying to stifle a thing with a means by which it grows. I don't think anybody in or outside our country concerned for a democratic and open Philippines doubt that must be done through political initiative and local resignation. Programs we must seek to bring insurgents down from the hills and by economic progress and justice show them that which the best intentioned among them fight. As president among my people, I will not betray the cause of peace by which I came to power, yet equally and again, no friend of Filipino democracy will challenge this. I will not stand by and allow an insurgent leadership to spurn our offer of peace and call our young soldiers and threaten our new freedom. Yet, I must explore the path of peace to the utmost, for at its end, whatever disappointment I meet, there is the moral basis for laying down the olive branch of peace and taking up the sword of war. Still, should it come to that, I will not waver from the course laid down by the great liberator. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right of God, give us to see the right. Let us finish the work we are in to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall be born. The battle As for his widow and for his orphans, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. Like Abraham Lincoln. I understand that force may be necessary before mercy. Like Lincoln, I don't relish it, yet I will do whatever it takes to defend the integrity and freedom of my country. Finally, my turn to that other slavery, our 26 billion foreign debt. I have said that we shall honor it, yet the means by which we shall be able to do so are kept from us. Many of the conditions imposed on the previous government that stole this debt continue to be imposed on us who never benefited from it. Thank you.
And no assist or liberality commensurate with the calamity that used to be vested on us have been extended. Yet, ours have to have been the most less expensive revolution ever. With little assist from others, we Filipinos fulfilled the first and most challenging state of affairs of the debt negotiation, the full restoration of democracy and to blame government. Else, Elsewhere in the different times, a more strengthened world's financial conditions, Marshall plans, and their like had been felt to be necessarily companions of returning democracy. When I meet with President Reagan, we commence a necessary talk about cooperation and the strengthening of friendship between our two countries. That assembled used to be every affirmation and a new beginning. I am certain it will lead to excellent consequences in all areas of frequent concern. Today, we face the aspiration of a human beings who have known to trans poverty and large unemployment for the preceding 14 years, and however, grant their lives from the obstruction of democracy. Wherever I meet in the campaign, slum region or improvised village, they came to me with one cry: democracy. Not meals, even though they in reality wish it alternatively democracy. Not work, even though they without a doubt preferred in however democracy. Not money, for they gave what little they had to my campaign. They did no longer assume me to work a miracle that would instantly put foods into their mouths, garments on their back, training on their children, and provide them work that would put dignity in their lives. But I experienced the urgent duty to respond shortly as a chief of the humans to deserving of all these things. We face a communist insurgency that feeds on economic deterioration, even as we carry a great share of the free world defenses in the Pacific. There are only two of the many burdens my people carry, even as they try to build a worthy and enduring house for their new democracy that we serve, as well as our dog for freedom in Asia. Yet, no sooner as one stone lead than two are taken away. Half our export earnings, $2 billion out of $4 billion, which is all we can earn in the restrictive market of the world, must go to pay just the interest on the deed, whose benefit the Filipino people never receive. Still, we fought for honor, and if only for honor, we shall pay. Not yet should we have to wring the payments from the sweat for our men's faces and sink all the wealth filled by the bondsman to 250 years of unrecruited toil. Yet, to all Americans, as the leader to a proud poor free people, I address this question. Has there been the greater test of national commitment to the ideals you hold dear than that my people have gone through? You have spent many lives and much treasure to bring freedom to many lands that were reluctant to receive it. And here you have a people who want it by themselves and need only that help to preserve it. 3 years ago, Corazon Aquino said, "Thank you, Americans, for the heaven, for operation, and the home you gave Ninoy, myself, and our children, and for the 3 happiest years for our lives together." Today, I say, join us, America, as we build a new home for democracy, another heaven for the oppressed, so it may stand as a shining testament for our two nations' commitment to freedom. That's the Corazon Aquino speech before the United States Congress on